Today I wanted to talk about magic systems. In literature, you can roughly categorize magic systems into hard magic systems and soft magic systems. Whereas a hard magic system is described as a magic system that has hard and set rules the system follows. An example for such a system would be Avatar: The Last Airbender, where what a certain kind of elemental magic can do is very precisely defined. It's pretty much a form of telekinesis, of elemental-based telekinesis. An example for a soft magic system. A soft magic system would be something where magic could basically do anything. An example for that would be Harry Potter. In Harry Potter, you have explicit spells with one explicit purpose, but you got a potentially unlimited number of spells that can do pretty much anything. Most magic systems fall somewhere in between the two extremes. Now, when it comes to role-playing systems, not only do we have hard and soft magic systems depending on the campaign world, on the setting you're playing, but we also have systems with strict rule systems for magic, and we've got free magic systems with very little rules. An example for a strict rules magic system would be D&D, where you've got a number of precisely described spells that tell you exactly what they do. And an example for a soft magic system where magic can do pretty much anything you can come up with would be Fate. Once again, most magic systems in RPGs land somewhere in between those extremes. Even if you are playing D&D, depending on how you use the rules, the magic system can become a lot softer if you stretch the explicit purpose, the explicit description of the spell, and go more with what the spirit of the spell is. Then you can allow your players a lot more freedom and creativity in how to use their limited number of spells. And you'd be surprised how much your players can do just with one spell, just with a handful of spells, if you give them this creative freedom. But if you have too much freedom in your magic system, that can also be a bad thing. Imagine you can do anything with magic. Either you can't come up with something creative, or it gets boring because you can solve any problem with some bullshit spell you just made up on the spot. It's a bit like in art. If you restrict yourself to one art form and to one specific form in that art, it can actually help out your creativity. Take painting, for example. Already you've restricted yourself to a visual art, to painting, and then you can further restrict yourself to just oil paintings. And working within that frame set focuses the mind on the possibilities you have within that frame set. And I think it's the same with a magic system. If you go from a completely free magic system and say your character can just do one type of elemental magic, then your players will think within this tool set and try using this one type of elemental magic to solve their problems. Now they have to become creative. Maybe they are an air magician. How do you attack with air? How do you use air to get around? How do you use air to gather information? These restrictions make it far more interesting. Magic systems are not only limited by what you can do with magic, but also how you use it, how much you can use it. For example, in D&D, you usually get a number of spells each day you can cast, and that number is your limit. Another example would be Shadowrun, where you get exhaustion if you use too much magic. Another system would be the Dark Eye, where you have, similar to your hit points, you've also got mana points, and casting a spell costs mana depending on how powerful the spell is. This also depends greatly on the power level that your PCs have or that is possible within your setting. If you have a very low fantasy world, you want magic effects that are not very flashy, not very big. And you can limit that by restricting, for example, spell levels. There is no level beyond second level, for example. Or by restricting mana points. Your characters just don't have a huge reserve of mana to cast these powerful spells a lot. And then if you go into the other direction, the less restrictions you put on the use of magic, the more magic will be used in the setting and the more high fantasy it will become. If a lot of high-level magic is readily available, if the players have a lot of spells, a lot of mana, a lot of freedom, you will soon find that they use a lot of magic quite liberally, and they will fly around, have enchanted weapons, enchanted mounts, flying enchanted mounts, whole flying ships, liberal use of combat magic, summoning magic, magic communication, everything you could usually use something mundane for, you will use magic for if it is just more convenient. A good example that actually comes from my experience with live action roleplay is light. You could use an oil lamp, a torch or a candle to produce light and get around. And with a modern lighter, matchsticks, it's not that hard to do. But mages will usually use a form of magic light. In LARP we also got safety concerns, and open flame is a fire hazard, so in some cases we don't want that and we rather not use it. You could use a enclosed lamp, you could use an LED lamp that looks like it is an oil lamp, for example. But mages will usually use a small flashlight or something and just light that up. Just pressing the button on a flashlight and having a powerful bright light source readily available is super convenient. These torches, they usually use these cheap magic effects that are possible in LARP, are a detriment to my immersion, and I don't like it. I like my LARP to be as low fantasy as possible, because then you don't need any effects, any special effects, and that makes it, for me at least, more immersive. But the same will be true in your RPG group. It's not that hard to have a fire kit and a torch at hand and go around that way. But if using magic doesn't cost you anything, if you've got cantrips to make light and can use as many of them as you want, it's more convenient than using a torch, so your players will use magic lights. That is just the most mundane problem I can think of you could solve with magic. But really, if you have access to enough magic, you can solve any problem. Can't get past a guard, can't bribe him, can't persuade him, use a command spell. Can't get up a cliff, not strong enough, don't have a rope, use spider climb or just fly up there. Overland travel takes up a lot of time and is dangerous, just use teleport spell. So magic can make a lot of these everyday challenges just non-existent. And that does not need to be a bad thing. If your campaign is not about that, and you can hand wave these problems away by use of magic, you can focus on everything you can't do with magic. I once mastered a game of The Dark Eye, but I kept it very low fantasy, very low power, very low magic. So none of the player characters could use any magic, and usually all the problems my players encountered were of a totally mundane nature. Bad weather, hungry wolves in the woods, people are getting sick, people are getting hungry. But then I would introduce magical elements into the game world, and because they would be a huge contrast to the rest of the gaming world, the gaming experience, they became really quite special. When they went into a valley of eternal mist, that was like they were transported into another fairy-like world, already with small changes. The supernatural element, the feeling of the extraordinary can become pretty strong. And I imagine back in the Middle Ages, the Stone Ages, when humans couldn't explain the natural world around them, even small things that were out of the ordinary that you couldn't understand were magical. Were maybe the will of the gods, will of the spirits, fate, something like thunder, sudden change in weather, an earthquake. That brings me nicely to the topic of what actually is magic. Now, that question in and of itself maybe doesn't make a lot of sense. What I think magic is, how I would define magic, is that it is natural or maybe artificial phenomena that we can't understand. So before we had a lot of natural science, most things, maybe everything, was magic because humans just couldn't understand it, couldn't really make sense of it other than through their stories of gods and demons and ghosts. Now that we have a slight better understanding of how things actually work, many things aren't magical anymore. We understand gravity, we have a pretty good understanding of where we come from, where the universe comes from, how the sun works, how the stars go across the sky. We know thunder and lightning and good and bad weather and climate and everything. But there are many things we still don't understand. We just stopped calling it magic. In the very big and the very small scales, our understanding reaches its limit. If you go into quantum theory, that does not make a lot of sense compared to the scale of the world we are used to, our physical world. And there are all kind of wonky phenomena we can observe in the quantum realm. But we don't call them magic anymore, it's quantum tunneling or something like that. Also in biggest scales, we know that our material universe, the matter that we can see and understand, makes up about 4%, I think, of our observed universe. We know from how the stars and the galaxies move that there should be way more massive matter, something that actually keeps the stars together. And we have no idea what it is. Absolutely no idea. So we call it dark matter. But we could also call it white magic or the magic of order. Then 70% of our universe is made out of something we call dark energy. So we observed, famously Hubble observed, that the universe expands and does so increasingly fast. So that takes energy, a lot of energy. So there's actually a lot more dark energy we can't see, we can't understand, than the kind of energy and matter we can see and understand. Once again, we really have no good idea, no good explanation of what this dark energy is. So we might as well call it chaotic magic. And for one of my homebrew campaigns, I used that as the basis for the magic system. I had white magic, that would be magic of order, it keeps the universe together. Magic to restore order, magic that repairs things, that heals things, magic of gravity. Then on the other hand, I had chaotic magic, black magic, magic of unfocused energy and chaos, magic of wacky time phenomena, and you could use that magic to destroy the existing order. Could just summon a huge ball of energy and let it explode. Or you could also try to impose a bit of order onto this chaos to get some more useful effects. For example, a zone in which time flows in a chaotic manner. And that of course would wreak havoc on anyone, anything caught in that zone. And I had a third school of magic that was grey magic. Those were spells that used a combination of black magic to break the existing order and white magic to create a new order. Those that were actually the most useful kind of magic and the most variety of spells. With those two principles, you can explain pretty much any magical phenomena you can think of. Transformation magic, combat magic, transportation magic, transmutation, anything. What does that mean for magic in RPGs? If magic is something you can't know and can't understand, but then you've got PCs who are mages, who use it every day, and when you have set rules how this magic works, it suddenly becomes quite mundane, I'd say. There's not so much mystery left to solve, even if you can't explain where the energy comes from to cast these spells and the mechanism behind it. The fact that you can use it as a reliable tool already takes away a lot of the mystique. So how do we get this feeling of magic, mystery into an RPG? One way could be like in my low-powered campaign, take the magic away from the players and then introduce it very sparingly in the world, and even then don't use the magic you find in the rule books. Use something you came up with yourself so the players don't know what to expect. Another way could be to introduce a bit of randomness, a bit of chaos into the use of magic. Make it less reliable, make it maybe even dangerous, make it have side effects. Then the players maybe will not rely on it that much. That is annoying for some players. They don't like it at all. And from a game design standpoint, it's not a very good solution. But from a storytelling perspective, it can have quite interesting consequences. Example for that would be Dungeon Crawl Classics, that has huge tables to randomize your magic spells with. So when your character learns a magic spell, it will be unique. No one else will have the exact same spell as you do. Also have tables for magic side effects, huge critical fail tables for magic. Can be a bit of slapstick too. A very free magic system like Fate could also preserve a bit of the mystery, though that takes a bit of work, of investment from both the player who's playing the mage and the GM. Probably the player who's using the magic themselves won't feel this much mystery because the rules are so flexible. The GM can decide how to interpret them, how to use them, how to describe the use of magic on the spot. And maybe the player describe what they do and what they hope to accomplish. Or maybe they just describe what they do and then the game master interprets that into a magical effect, and there are no hard rules between the two. So it becomes a creative, very creative process of communication. And the product, the magical effect, can be quite surprising, quite different, maybe even every time they use the spell, if they put a slight variation in it, if the GM doesn't remember what he did last time, if the circumstances are different, then the effect will probably be different. So I see potential in there. If you want to make it a bit more predictable for the player, maybe you can preserve the mystery at least for the other players. That the mage player and the GM will know what the magic does, but they use it in a way, they describe it in a way, maybe through passing secret notes, that keep the mystery and the unknown in the magic, and the player will just describe what they are doing, and the GM will describe the effect. But the other players won't know that one will lead to the other. You could potentially do that in D&D if you have not memorized the whole D&D spell list yet, and the mage player only describes what they are doing, what magic signs and components they are using, but don't actually describe the spell name. That is quite a bit more mysterious and atmospheric and immersive than when you just say, I cast Fireball at 3rd level. What do you think is the most fascinating aspect of magic in RPGs, or magic in literature, magic in general? Let me know in the comments below. Thanks for watching, and goodbye.